All right, we are live. Wyatt Wilson, how you doing, man?
Hey Jesse, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for being on the show today. I know that we have a commonality that has been pairing us up here, and I'm really excited to get to talk to you today because you're someone that has we were actually had a little conversation beforehand. You jumped in the rock bouncing and the racing scene pretty recently, and you've
Yep.
gone from jumping in to being super successful right out of the gate. So. How are you, man? Where are things? What is life like right now for you?
Life is good. It's just life has kind of been on a little bit of a hold here for me in racing. My youngest son just went to the Navy, and so I
Oh
was trying to
wow.
get him all sent off and everything like that. And we're really just starting to crank back up in the racing aspect of it. And so trying to get going back. 2020 COVID's really put a hurting on our whole schedule, and where I live in Kentucky, everything here is still kind of at a standstill. It's back at a standstill. Our governor's kind of really jacked us around, so it's been really
Hmm.
difficult for any of our event guys playing anything, and they've had to postpone once again. So it's just we're really just trying to really get ready to get after this 2020 season. Really, the start of it for us, honestly. So
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there's races are getting kind of pushed around quite a bit here. Um, I had planned on being at the Pro Rock races for the end of the year. I'm still hoping to be there. I'm doing the final touches in terms of safety gear to get all the bells and whistles done so we can come race. But I'm curious. There was I think Chocolaco got moved or canceled or something. But I'm just curious. Well, what do you think is going to happen for the rest of the season?
man, that's a toss up. Man, that's really a good question. I'm not really sure what's going to happen the rest of the season. We really thought we were in the clear and things were really going to start turning around for Kentucky, and now it seems like we're going backwards. So
Hmm.
the event at Rush has been postponed, and so our Alabama event has been canceled, I guess, and then we don't know what's going to happen with
Yeah.
Race to Riches, and so uh,
Hmm.
it's tough right now for these promoters to really get anything scheduled and keep it on the books. So
Yeah, that's true. I don't know why I didn't even think about Race to Riches being canceled. That's such a significant event every year. That's a big one. That's a really big one.
yeah, I don't
But
think it's canceled yet, but I know that the one in Alabama, the Chocolaca or whatever it was, it got
yeah.
postponed and canceled, and so that's was our next one. So I don't know that it'll get going before Race to Riches though, the way everything's going around here. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. But one thing I want to talk about with you is you said you jumped onto the scene pretty recently before we started the interview. Tell me about where'd you get your pull in the off-road world, and then how did you make the jump into the one of the most highly competitive race scenes?
Okay. Well, I'm from a family of dirt racers originally.
Mhm.
My father raced late models, and we were in that when I was young with him. And years later, we my brother and I have Toyota trucks, and
Okay.
that's how it started. We have an 80-acre farm that we live on here, and we started building these trucks. We started putting studs in the tires and driving around here locally in our place. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of how my four-wheel drive or my off-road adventures started. And then it really steamrolled into razors because of Travis Skelton. I blame him for all this.
Okay.
I had saved for a bass boat. I was planning on buying a boat, and he came over here and made me take a ride in his razor. And in 2015, and that's basically where all this started, was getting in his razor and going for a ride around the property, and then getting back and having to have one. And it wasn't but a couple of weeks later that his brother and I both ended up with one, and it really started a chain reaction. I never thought I'd ever have a razor.
Hmm.
I actually some of my buddies because they spent all that money on 900s
Hmm.
years ago before the 1000s were even out, And it's crazy to now think that I have 2 razors and one race razor, and we're actually competing in competitions. It's pretty nuts. So I never would have ever expected that. So
you didn't start with the chassis. Or correct me if I'm wrong. You started with a full body, and you were racing a full body for a while. Is that correct?
A couple of races, some of the local stuff. I think I may have entered one SRRS at Dirt Nasty in a full body and raced it up and down the hills there at the new Dirt Nasty. But other than that, I knew if I was going to be serious and really be competitive, that there's no way that I was going to be able to do it unless it was going to be in a chassis, of course. And so the opportunity came about 2 years ago in August to get this chassis that Gilbert had built, and nobody had raced it. The guy that had it built, Tanner Myers, he was going to build a house and just decided to sell it before he ever raced it. So I got into it reasonably, I guess you would say. And then I really went from there. I thought it was ready to go, and then basically we started throwing a bunch of parts and money at it, and we're still not through yet. I mean, there's a billet transmission case over here getting ready to get stuck in. I mean, it seems like it's not stopped costing me money, of course, since but that's part of it.
Yeah, it is. But it seems. Yeah, it is. I mean, there's not really anything else I could say to that. My question would be, because I know we were trying to schedule this interview for last week, and you mentioned you had lost your high gear. What happened for you to do that? And is that the first transmission trouble that you've had?
Well, we went to Mid-America. Well, first of all, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
So I wasn't gonna race any SRRS this year, and then with the delay and everything, Bikini Bottoms came up a couple of months ago, and I was itching to get back at it. And a buddy of mine, Wade Good, called me and said, "Hey man, we're gonna leave late at night. You ought to go with us." And so I had just actually got my machine back together, and I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So we took off and went down there. We raced that race, and the first race, the first hill, I blew the motor up. And so it just had basically sit in the trailer, blown up, until the Wednesday before, or the Tuesday, I guess, before Mid-America race, Pro Rock race. And we got it out of the trailer Tuesday night, got it in here. Motor came in Wednesday. I started working on it. Thursday came around. A buddy of mine, Shane Whitaker, came by and helped me in the morning. Try to work on it some. And Josh Hampton with 859 Off-Road came up here and brought my 4-seat S back to me, and he built a cage for me for it. And basically stayed here to get the motor all done, to help me get going to get to Mid-America. So we went to Mid-America, went down there and raced. We were lucky enough to place third after the combined times of both the hills. And we went to the knockout. And we were planning on winning knockout, of course. And won the first race. And then got up against Wade. And I was leading. I had him by about a car length, I think, and came down on the gas, because that's kind of what you have to do. And we blew high gear out of the trans. So I watched him zoom on by, and he later won knockout. So that was, it is what it is, but that's part of it.
Yeah, at least if you're going to get beat by anybody.
Here, but it does move.
Yeah. If you're going to get beat by somebody, at least get beat by the guy who's going to win the entire thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get beat by anybody. I don't care if it's Tim or Travis or any of us. So it's not good for me to be beat by anybody. I tell my sons I only got into this sport to be competitive. I didn't get into this sport to run 9th or 10th. I got in this sport to win events. And, we've been pretty fortunate to come on the scene and do well in the Bounty last year and win some events. And, it's really difficult for us to race on Fridays because I'm a very small company. It's just me. And so it's tough for me to take off and travel on Thursday and go to try to pre-run. and it's hard. It's hard to afford this sport in general, but it's
Yeah,
really
of course.
hard to afford this amount on work as well as the racing part of it. So.
What do you think the fix is for races on Friday? Because I have more than one driver talk to me about, I race, let's just say what it is. I mean, I race Pro Rock because it's all in one day and I can't take a Friday off. I mean, what is the perfect solution? Is it, only these people race and they race all day Friday, or do they try and cram it all in one day? Because the Pro Rock race gets it all in one day, but they don't get done racing until sometimes like super late, 8:30, 9 in the day, and they start at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's why we have so many different series now. I like the format of Pro Rock. It works well for me. It's typically the kind of hills that I want to participate in. I don't love the way the sport's heading because, I guess maybe if I raced all these series, then I would rather race like that and the buggy would stay together. But I've always been at heart, I've been more of a bounty type of hill climber, I guess you'd say. And so I want to do something hard. I mean, like we were talking about Race to Riches earlier. When we showed up at Race to Riches last year, I was confident that I would climb both of those hills without them touching them. There was no doubt in my mind that I'd climb Hill 1 that nobody climbed. And I definitely felt for sure that I could climb Hill 2 before they ever touched it. I felt like there was a line there for us to climb it. That's my kind of event. That's what I want to do is the hard stuff. And it does suck when people are tumbling down and things are breaking, and I get it. And so the series is that like Outlaw that two are running at one time. I think that speeds it up, and I like racing Outlaw. This year they were just so far away from me. I think the closest one was like Mid America, or actually the closest one I think was Hawk Pride, and that's 6.5 hours, 7 hours away. So I hate driving, honestly. We're very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be in Kentucky here, and a lot of stuff be oriented right around us. But I hate the drives. I hate 10, 12-hour drives. I can't stand it. So
listen,
I'm not turning into a girl. So
listen, as a fan, so AOP is about an hour and 35 minutes from my house, maybe. Sometimes, I didn't even drive down for the Ultra 4 race because it was, first off, it was easier for me to watch it on the live stream there. But all that being said, I highly underestimated the dedication that drivers have to driving to these events. When I realized, I looked at the Pro Rock schedule for this year, and the closest one to me was 5 hours away, and I was just like, I can't. That is a huge stretch. I'm in shock and awe that people like yourself and like Anthony Yant and people from the Northeast that drive 10, 12 hours just to go watch a race. That's crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It shows you the level of commitment that people have to this sport. I just couldn't imagine driving every event was 8 or 10 and 12 hours away. That would be insane to me. I feel like I would have to get into something else. I don't know if I could do it, honestly. There's a couple of guys that were driving before from Florida all the way up here to go to the Pro Rock races. That was crazy. I just couldn't.
I parked next to those guys at the last race of last year. They're really nice guys. I think they're Diamond Powder Inc. is their Instagram handle. They're very nice people. But yeah, crazy that they come up from Florida.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
I think they're going to be back next season. I think they were just taking a little.
That's crazy. That first off, again, I'll just say my piece. That's crazy to drive that far. But let me ask you this. So the argument against Bounty Hills is there's not enough winnings for the person to put their car on the line. Obviously nobody wants to fix their car over and over and over again every weekend, but if the payout was there, people would be more likely to do so. So that being said, you know, my question is, how much would it take, do you think, for drivers to start showing up and really hitting those bounty hills again? What's the dollar amount that makes it worth hitting that hill?
I mean, as far as there's a couple of different scenarios, I guess I would look at. I mean, some of these guys that come and they pay these fees to come and race. I mean, a lot of these guys have been lucky to ever podium. They're coming to race because they love the sport, and I think over the whole entire field, what would help would be to just lower our entry fees, or to take our entry fees away, where it make it easier for us to participate, for everybody to participate. As far as the dollar number goes, for what it would cost to bounty, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Race to Riches is a great thing, but it still costs us $1,000 a piece to enter the event.
That's crazy.
We're definitely not making any money on this stuff unless you would win. So
yeah.
I think it's as far as people talk about the sport growing, I think it would help the sport if it was just if we didn't have to pay entry fees and that kind of thing, because the bottom line is if you talk to anybody that races, it's going to cost them a minimum of $400 or $500 by the time they pay entry fee, fuel getting to where they're going, food and everything else. I mean, they're spending $400 or $500 a weekend just to race, and that's difficult for a lot of people, especially if we're having to miss work on Friday or Thursday and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you,
like
and I really
making it more affordable would help.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that something that the argument to that is, people say all the time, if you can't afford the hobby, get out of the hobby, and I think that that's a really, really poor way to look at it, because you should want everyone to be there, to be there. It's just one of those things, like, you may have someone who's just a little bit excluded because of the financial side of things, but if they had the financial side, they'd be, right there in the mix. And again, not a socialistic idea by any means, but I don't know. I think it's very punching down when people say, if you can't afford it, it's the wrong hobby, or find a different hobby. That's not necessarily a fair statement, I always feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the sport continuing to grow like it is, so I'm interested in trying to do whatever we can possibly do, whether it's fan base or racers or whatever it is, to try to get it out there. Because look at the guys from Missouri, the Perryville Mafia. Look at in the last 2 years, look at how that whole town has basically got behind those guys. And it's not just Adam and the Storches and Daniel. It's and Shane. It's crazy. They bring a ton of people in when they come, and that's what we want. We want people that are good people like those guys to be in this sport and bring all these people with them. And it's really interesting of how it helps these communities. We were talking to a guy out there at Mid America that was working for that guy the other day, and he said, when they have events out there, it doubles the population of the town. That'd be well beyond just in the off-road community. All these parks we go to, they're making a big change. So
you were cutting a little bit. I don't
know what the solution is to grow the sport, but I think your question before was about what's the dollar figure for the bounties and stuff like that. I think it would be nice to distribute that back through the field more than maybe just first, second, third, or it's nice at Pro Rock they pay through fifth. That helps people get a little something back. I think Race to Riches used to pay back to 10th place. At least you get your $1,000 entry fee back, which is still nice. So I think distributing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have to agree with you that getting that money back. I mean, if I knew if I all I had to do was get 10th and I was going to offset some of the cost, I would definitely be more inclined to show up. Now, so I'm on the other side of the coin where, if I show up to a Pro Rock endurance race, I'll go ahead and tell you, you know, I'm not going to be, I personally don't feel that I'll be, contending for first place. The car's not set up, completely all the way for me to push it. The budget's not set up. I got another kid coming. The list of excuses goes on and on. But what I do is I have never had a sensation quite like racing, and I always am very vocal about it since I got a chance to race, that everyone should experience it at least one point in their life, because when you're on a racetrack, you've got people bumping you and you're bumping people, and you're in the heat of the moment. That's something that, I mean, it's really, I've done a lot of things. I've jumped out of airplanes. I've been scuba diving in caves. I've done a lot of different things, and there's nothing quite like the hook of racing. And I just, as someone that's getting into the sport and gets hooked and sees all these things, if you had a magic wand and you said, I'm going to change the future of rock bouncing, in the future of, the razor bouncing, all that kind of fun stuff. If you had a magic wand and said, boom, do whatever you want, what are the things that you would have to do, or that you would want to do rather?
Um, well, that's a tough question, Jesse. I mean, I think that I would like everybody to be able to get to the events, because honestly, the fans, if they're sitting at home watching it on the screen, it just, it never does it justice. These hills that we're
Agreed.
climbing out here, I mean, it's crazy. When you see them in the video, it looks like you could walk right up them. And there are several
Yeah.
hills that we've went up that I physically have tried to walk up and can't even walk up them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if I had that wand, I would like to transport all these people that can see it or are interested in the sport. I would try to get them there, because there's nothing there's just nothing like going there and seeing it live. Being up beside these cars that have 2,000 horsepower, 1,500 horsepower, and being able to get right up to them. I tell people all the time that they should come and bring their kids, because if you like to go to if your kids like to go to Monster Jam, they would love this. Because you can literally walk up and touch and talk to the drivers, and then watch that car participate. So I think the biggest thing is just getting the people to the shows, making it more accessible for the people to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's lowering the cost of the tickets, or if just I don't know what the solution is, but growing the fan base is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't really put much emphasis on attendance. I had never really thought much about that, and I know that that is a large portion of where the money comes from for these things. I wonder, so I look at the schedules for all of the series every year, and you can plot them out on a map, and off-road parks are kind of few and far between, but it seems like they're always in the same central areas, and they always race the same parks. I think Pro Rock has done an excellent job this year of running parks out of the ordinary, like the Chocoloco race, and there's a few other places that they were going this year that they don't typically hit. And in a perfect world with my magic wand, we have a race in Kentucky, we have a race in Tennessee, Alabama, we have a race in, Oklahoma, and then maybe Illinois or Indiana, not Illinois, Indiana, or, he's really spread out the area. But then again, it goes back to my point of, well, now you're forcing the drivers at some point, you have to make a long distance drive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Hey,
you're
Trent.
cutting in and out on me, but I think I got the gist of it.
Hey, I
What's
tell you
that?
what, Wyatt, if you want to give me a call, we can just switch over that way, and that way we can kind of. There's a little bit of delay on there too. We can get that delay out.
Okay, that's fine. You want to try to do
Perfect.
that?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you, sir. All right, everybody.
Let's see if we can do that.
In the meantime here, while we're waiting on Wyatt to give me a ring on my mobile, I need to turn it off of Do Not Disturb. While we're waiting on Wyatt, really good questions. I hadn't thought about audience. So let me ask you guys, and for those listening on the podcast version, go to our Facebook, DM us, whatever. What would you do to increase fan attendance in all of those different places? All right, I've got Wyatt. Wyatt, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, perfect. If somebody out there listening can let me know if you hear Wyatt. If you don't, or something's wrong, just let me know. But we're going to keep on trucking. That's much better, by the way. It's a lot more clear, and I got a better response rate from you too, Wyatt.
All right.
So getting people to the off-road parks, that's the key plan here. Is there anything else that you could imagine that would make, what could you do for a draw? Because Mid-America has this amazing, amenities section, and I'm going to pull it up here on the live stream, but Mid-America has the pool and the bar and all those things, but what are other things that can be done to get people to show up to these events?
I mean, Jesse, I'm not real sure.
Sure.
I mean, if it can be done, Mid-America's doing it right now. I mean, they have drag racing, they have hill climbing, they have the actual flat track racing. I mean, that is a spectacular venue. I think all these other off-road parks, they should visit. If they own and run these parks, they should visit Mid-America just to see what's going on out there.
I would agree.
Last event was the first time we'd ever been there.
Okay.
And it's always great to go and see the off-road family, but it was pretty cool because of after the survival stuff, they took a pretty long break, and it allowed everybody to just kind of chill and relax. There was a bunch of people in the pool, and we were all hanging out. Of course, the other side of the coin to that is, we didn't get through. Of course, we did the knockout after the racing. We didn't get through till like 1 something in the morning. So, or like close to that. So,
yeah. Well, it looks like, on 4th of July, those of us who are sitting here on the live stream, they had fireworks, and they had, a number of different things. That's amazing. That draw is amazing. The pool looks like they had a carnival. They have live bands. And this is something that I have had in my mind for a long time. I think the responsibility of these off-road parks needs, the weight needs to fall on them more. And I'll pick on one that's close to my house is Adventure Off-Road Park. Benji, I think his name is Benji Engelberg, but Benji is always online talking to the people who come to his park, and he's talking to the guys at Ultra 4, and he asks them, what do you guys think of this race and this and that? And he's gotten feedback from them directly, and so much so that at the next Ultra 4 race that's at Adventure Off-Road Park, they're actually going to build out a rock garden like they do in Reno Nationals. They're going to have that stretched out right in the opening area. And that's the kind of thing where I see, okay, this off-road park is listening. This off-road park is taking notes. And then I see something like Mid-America, and I'm like, I really think that these off-road parks should really start, kind of reinvesting in their trails, reinvesting in their amenities, because obviously it makes a huge difference.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I love survival. I would like to get in a car, and I talked to John and Jamie. I'd love to buy one of their old cars and to pick up, and try to race a little bit of that stuff. But the problem, because you race it, the problem with that is the draw of the fans. It's hard. Nobody can see anything. It's not like King of the Hammers where they have all these trackers on these cars, and you can watch it live feed, and you can track exactly who you're rooting for, along the way, and see, what's happening with them. So there has to be something like that garden or something to actually for the fans to be able to sit there and watch, for it to be interesting for them. Because, a car zooming by and stopping isn't enough of a draw. Stopping at the gate for them to check the numbers isn't enough to honestly keep people's attention to make them want to come and do it. So, and especially if they're having to eat a bunch of dust.
Yeah,
So,
I absolutely agree with you. So yes, you're exactly right. Did you by chance go back and watch any of the Ultra Force stuff at AOP? They had the live feed there. Did you watch any of that?
I did not. I
Okay.
haven't had a chance to do any of that. No.
So I think it's the King of the Hammers production tent and whatnot. But they had some cameras in the woods, and they had a drone that was actually live streaming out that they would kind of flip through. And I know that obviously Southern Rock, they have their hosts set up in the trailer, and I got a comment back. I said, "Can everybody hear Wyatt?" And I got a good comment back. Good comment back that you'll have to go look at after this. But the Hammer Productions, and I said this last week, Ultra 4, Pro Rock, Southern Rock Racing Series, that is a world of different budgets. Ultra 4's budget is obviously much higher, and I could be wrong, but my impression is that Ultra 4's budget is much, much higher than the East Coast Series. Now, they were able to do it. They were able to get cameras in the woods. Now, was it the best thing in the entire world? No, because most of the time you were sitting looking at the open section where cars were just passed through. I agree with you. But then I think about, okay, from a spectator that I'm actually in the park, I think about Dirty Turtle, where the track is totally out in the open. And I think that is just one of the coolest things. It's one of the biggest draws. There's got to be, it's not the promoter. And unless the promoter wants to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into, the production equipment, it's not on the promoter to make that change. A promoter can't show up and say, "Hey, I'm going to build, tens of thousands of dollars worth of short course out in the open and just have everybody run out in the open where we can all watch." That's not something a promoter can do.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it would fall on the track themselves, the course themselves, the parks. I think the part of the problem is, most of the time when you can afford to open up a park that many acres, it's in a rural part of America somewhere.
Sure.
The property's cheap, or they're leasing the ground, and so it gets really difficult.
That's true.
To do a lot with it when the property's all leased. And I don't know if, and I guess the best example that I could give you for that is Rush, because I think a lot of that property is leased.
Okay.
That place is got the possibility to do a lot. That I love that park. EB is just doing amazing things with what he has, and I think that he's getting ready to do some change in there. And I think some amenities are getting ready to happen, and that'll be great because there's just no amenities there really. And so,
yeah,
the difference of that place and having 6,000 acres to ride, and then you go to Wildcat Off-Road, which has a great store and nice amenities, and if you have a problem, there's somebody around. But it's not as big as Rush,
Sure.
So, but that property's all owned. He owns all that property. So,
sure.
I think it's just you fight that battle of these parks are out in the middle of nowhere for the most part.
Yeah. So, and it isn't cheap to own a park. We're kind of sitting here, quarterback or armchair quarterback and saying that, it would just be this easy if you just did this. And, it's definitely not just that easy to do something like that. I know personally from every video I've ever seen, my favorite park was Pump Jack Off-Road. And they closed down because of some insurance things, and the ball just keeps rolling on and on and on. But I'm always curious because I think that the endurance side is obviously growing. Rock bouncing will always be the grassroots of the East Coast racing, but just where the future goes, because again, I've kind of talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast. I mean, we're running out of times that we can run the same hills. How do you feel about, when they say Rush, you already have a pretty good idea of the hill that you're going to be running? They may throw a new obstacle or something, but how does it make you feel that you know what to expect and exactly what to prepare for?
Yeah, I mean, when I very first started and I hadn't ever been to any park, I felt like I was at a total disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I feel like that I'm trying to go and race against, Tim, how are you going to go race against Tim Cameron? It's been to this same park, numerous times and raced almost all these hills, and is somewhat familiar with how fast he can go around this corner and do that kind of stuff. But the reality is that each one of these hills, for the most part, changes every time we go there. I mean, I know it is the same hill. Race to Riches, I hate to go back right to it, but that's a good example. I mean, that hill had been climbed before several times by a lot of people. And, that it got dug out underneath that little rock ledge, and nobody climbed it. Not a razor, not a big bouncer, nobody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just depends on how these guys, the promoters, effectively change these hills, because they can either get there and dig a little bit of dirt out and make it unclimbable, or they can push a little bit of dirt up and everybody gets up it. So, I think it's the fine line, and it's a difficult line, and I'm glad I'm not in their shoes.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're armchair quarterbacking it, but I can't imagine being in their shoes to, like Race to Riches when nobody climbed Hill 1, and could you only imagine if we'd have tried Hill 2 and nobody would have climbed that too?
Yeah.
I mean, Rush sells out almost every time.
Yeah, and I actually, it's funny, I didn't pull it on screen here. I just pulled up a picture of the Rush parking lot, and it is bananas how many people that they can get in there. It is absolutely insane. I had no idea that they were getting as many people. I would love to know an attendance on how many people get in there, because I'm going to pull it up here in just a moment. But it's pretty wild. I didn't realize, but
I thought it was like 3,500 people, and the fire marshal shuts it down or something like that, because a couple of years ago, before Travis Skelton and I, either one was racing, if I'm not mistaken, he and his brother took some Toyota trucks up there, and they didn't have their tickets yet, and they were actually turned away at the gate because they couldn't take any more people inside.
Now that happened that happened earlier this year too at what's the race that they did? Was it Moonlight? Was the very first race of the year, and they had to come out and get the city involved and all this and that because they had reached capacity. That's wild. And my question would be, are they reaching capacity of how many people can be in one? I mean, I don't know how you track people at like an outdoor event space, that's acres and what have you. For those looking at the screen here, that's the parking lot of Rush I was seeing. There's probably 1,000 cars parked there, or vehicles or something. But it is very interesting to see that parks eventually have to turn people away. Well, let me ask you this, because we'll get off of them, and I know there's a few promoters that listen to the show. Again, we're not picking on you. You got a really sucky job a lot of the time. So it's one of those things where I'm glad I'm not in your shoes, because everybody wants to get mad at somebody. So you guys have a hard enough job. But where is your favorite park? And then to backhand that, where have you had the best success in your race career?
Well, we sprinkled a little bit of success around in the Bounty anyways. I like Hawk Pride. I haven't got to ride. Unfortunately, we haven't got a chance to go ride a lot of these parks. We're so exhausted by the time the racing gets through. Mainly, we just want to go home and get a hot shower.
I get it.
But we like to go to Rush. I've ridden at Rush a couple of times, and I like Rush because I feel like it's great for people that don't have side-by-sides, that they can come and go to an event there. My mom showed up there in a Traverse and drove it around, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I like that aspect of it. We went to parks before, we went to the first Blue Holler event. We went and only took the race buggy, and golly, Tasha rode on the hood of it down into the park. We rode, seemed like for 15 minutes to get to the race hills.
Yeah, and Blue Holler was where the waterfall was, correct?
Yeah, okay. That's where the waterfall was. Yeah.
Okay. Now, see, that's the argument that I always get from other people is, well, the good hills are there; they're just way on back in the woods, and we've talked about it again ad nauseum on the podcast, but it's a safety issue and this and that, because DC told me, he's like, there's plenty of hills in every single one of those parks that we haven't ran yet you just can't get spectators back there, and you can't, it's not a safe thing. So my question is, how or why did they, it looks like in Blue Holler, they got plenty of folks down there. Was there just significantly less people, or how are they making that work?
I'm not real sure about that. Honestly, the reason we raced the waterfall was because Clyde wanted it. The owners had told me that they had other hills that were cut and made that we had never been on before, but Clyde wanted to do the waterfall. Wow. So, I get that. I get that he wanted to do the waterfall, but, in my opinion, rocks suck. They hurt. They're hard. They don't give. And I've got a bunch of dents on my roll cage to prove it that, they hurt. So I would rather race on natural stuff and some dirt, possible. So when we're rolling down them, it's not so hard of a landing. Mm-hmm. But I don't care to ever I don't care to ever race that waterfall again. I'll tell you that. Once was enough for me.
I understand. I can only imagine, because again, it's one of those situations where videos don't do it justice. And, to have pretty much one guy make it the entire time, between both sets of vehicles, that should tell you just how nasty that thing is in person. Yeah.
I was with DC down there at the bottom of the hill before we started, and he said, "What are you going to do?" He asked me, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Man, I've never been here before. I'm going to get up on it, just feel it out and see what it feels like." He said, "I'm thinking about jumping it." And I said, "Dude, you're nuts." And he said, "Well, I'm thinking about it. I was talking to Anthony Yon about it, and I don't know." But I said, "Well, if you're gonna jump it, you better tighten your front shocks up."
Yeah.
Yep. I got to go all hard. And we started adjusting shocks. And, I don't think there's any way that anybody else would have climbed it. That's for sure. It didn't happen. Bobby tried to jump it.
Yeah.
Cozine was pretty close. I swear if he could have got another inch, I think he could have got the rear tires to it and he could have got up it.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. It's just that took some balls. He jumped that once, and then his trailing arm was so twisted and he hit it again. He was running sideways when he jumped it the second time.
Oh my gosh. See, these are the kind of things and details that just get missed in the videos. So there's something to it, there's something to be in there in person.
Yeah. When he was lining up, I was telling him, I told him, I was hollering to all the fans. I said, "Get your phones out. Get your phones out. This boy's about to jump this thing." And they were looking at me like I was crazy. And then as soon as he jumped it the first time and didn't make it, you should have seen them all reaching for their phones. And I said, "He's not done. He's not done."
Yeah.
He landed back on the tires, and I knew if it was going to go, he was going to try it again. And it was crazy the amount of people that had him out the second time he tried it that didn't have him out the first time he tried it.
Oh, my gosh. So, well, I would probably think you're crazy too. If you walked up, I know you're a racer, probably just talk to him, but I'd probably be like, "Oh, he's probably not really going to jump it," and then to have him just full force fly it out there.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish I had a little more DC in me, but I don't. That I was a little more carefree, but that boy is insane, man. I'm telling you, he's nuts. So.
Yeah. My bank account's not deep enough to have too much DC in me. I got very, very little. We'll say it like that. But anyways, so do you do any trail riding? I know you mentioned, after races and stuff, you guys aren't really doing much, but you mentioned you have the 4-seater, which is again, another test subject vehicle, which always looks awesome. Do you guys do any kind of trail riding at all?
Yeah. We're very fortunate to be around a couple of parks, that are close, Wildcat. We actually know Terry and the owners of Wildcat.
Very nice.
So, it's nice to go down there and hang out with those guys and to trail ride with them. And, we get to do a little trail riding, but it seems like when racing season's on, it doesn't, sadly, there's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's like race prep and then racing and then trying to do the other stuff that pays for that,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big part of it. But one thing I want to talk to you about is, what are some of the things, we've kind of glossed over, or not glossed over, but we briefly mentioned that your time in the sport has been, surprisingly short. So what would you say are 3 things that you've learned that have been the most valuable in your time? Because you've come right up to speed really quickly. So what are 3 things that you would tell a new guy?
I would tell the new guy to leave his purse in the truck.
Okay.
Because, I mean, honestly, that's what you got to do. I mean, if you're going to come and run these events, you gotta be able to actually hit the gas. I mean, it depends on how. I would honestly ask them how they trail ride, because if they're just easing around trail riding, they don't have any business going to a race event.
Sure.
To try to participate. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that I have learned is that these things will climb crazy hills if you push the gas hard enough. I mean, I've actually shown up at places before them and see the race hill, and be like, that's what they're having us climb.
Gosh.
And it'd go right up it like it was a billy goat or something. So, I mean, I don't know about 3 things, but that's definitely one. I mean, you got to have the will and the want to be willing to rebuild this thing on Monday.
Yeah. Because
that's the reality of this sport. If it's going to be a good show, it's typically going to be some repairs done.
Yeah, that's true. I've talked to a few guys who, they kind of like pencil it in on their schedule every year. They're like, well, if I'm going to do something, I need to show out at least once, once a season kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out whether it's worth it or not of showing out. I've been lucky to be able to have some success in racing and not totally demolish a car.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's good or bad, because I've seen some people that get way more coverage than I do, and they've not ever really won anything. So I don't, it's a hard thing you have to find that line as well of how much you're willing to trash your stuff. I mean, I'm like the underdog of everything. I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
I run a very small company. It's just me. I mean, I basically live in a Bobcat or a mini excavator all the time. And so I guess, it's hard for me to just destroy something.
Yeah.
Because I know it's going to cost me big time. And it's, I don't have any employees making any money while I'm gone racing or anything else either. So
yeah, absolutely. I can 100,000% relate to you in that matter. Feeling, like you can't just go blow it just to blow it, and just make a point. But I definitely understand that. So this will probably be an easier list. What are a few things that you would tell a new guy to save them some headaches in terms of things not to do?
I think that they would just have to understand that they're going to have to spend so much money at the get-go, because it's going to save you money in the long term. I mean, I'm sitting in my shop right now staring at a motor that's destroyed. I'm sitting out here looking at another transmission on the floor over here. These billet cases are a good example. I got this billet case from TCP. He finally got these things done. And, by the time you trash a couple of transmissions, you might be better off to have that case in the first place.
Yeah.
And not have to go through that all the time of repairing that trans. So, I mean, that's not the end of the answer. I mean, that case isn't going to solve everything. Travis blew out high gear in his, and he has that case recently. So, I mean, you're going to have good axles. You're going to have good drive shaft. You got to get the power to the ground. That would be my biggest things. I mean, you have to have those parts, because I wouldn't race if I didn't have Turner axles and a DC built front diff and that kind of stuff, because you go through all this effort and energy to get there.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those parts in these hills, you're going to break something, and in there you're going to be trapped on the hill and you can't finish.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to have to spend the cash to be a competitive person if you're going to be all in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to win. Now, if you just want to compete, then by all means, bring it and come out and compete. You're not gonna win against these guys. I mean, you have to push and push hard to win against these guys. When you have DC Thompson and Tim Cameron, Travis Skelton, these guys, they're not cutting any slack. I mean, they're going all in every time, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, what's so funny is one of the questions I kind of asked like before we got started in our little pre-conversation was, I want to know what has catapulted you, to success. What has gotten you there? And I think that you just summed it up. It's the mentality that you have that, to me, it's kind of cliche. Like, I'm not coming to compete, I'm coming to win. But what you just said right there was, okay, we are coming to win, but it's deeper than that. It goes more than that. We're coming to win, and we've been coming to win. 4 months ago when I first bought this, this diff, I chose a winning. Okay, let's knock something out of the list here. Front differential, I'm not going to have to worry. I'm not going to worry about that. So 4 months ago, you made the choice to knock that out. 3 months ago, last week you made the choice to get the billet transfer or the billet transmission. You're making these choices that not just on race day are you preparing to win, but you're preparing to win every single day leading up to every single race, and so on and so forth. And I personally think that is the mind of the champion. I talked to you mentioned, Jamie in endurance, their team that they've got running right now. I don't foresee anybody beating them for a while because they are great. And it's the same thing. I did an interview with them, and they're literally doing an interview with me while they're working on the car. And they're getting prepared today for the battle tomorrow. And they're not, they're pulling every bolt. They're doing every single little detail about it to get ready for that race tomorrow. And I mean, that's what you just told me. And that's how you prepare. That's how you get ready. And to me, that's why you've been so successful.
Yeah, and I feel like it doesn't matter how much you do prepare. I always feel like I've never prepared enough.
Yeah,
I
sure.
Feel like sometimes I feel like I'm ready, and then when I get there and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I'm going over all the bolts that I tightened in my head. Did I get everything tight? Did I get it? Did I check everything that I should have checked? Because it's easy to overlook things,
Sure.
And that's a big thing.
Now, when you're doing race prep, are you going through? I mean, are you like pulling front diffs and going through them, or how in depth does hey, did I check this? What does checking the diff look like? What is checking A-arms and things like that? What are some subtle things that people might miss that you could help out with?
I mean, you better check your radius rod bolts, make sure they're tight. You better check a lot of this, check your ball joints, check your wheel bearings. It's just a lot of the stuff that you would check your regular car. Mm-hmm. It's just you better check them. Realistically, my race razor hasn't probably got. I've probably not put more than 400 miles on my razor since I bought it in 2 years. It doesn't travel a lot of miles. It's just the miles it travels are very difficult and hard on it. So it's not like we're wearing stuff out like wheel bearings, or we're just tearing stuff up for the most part. Mm-hmm. So you just want to make sure everything's tight. The abuse that they do take, it seems like, I don't know how the bolts get loose.
Sure.
You didn't run this thing. We weren't out in the desert running hundreds of miles. We raced for 2 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Absolutely.
It's difficult for me to figure out how things get bent and twisted and loose, but they do. So it's just trying to go over and make sure that something's obviously not going to come apart at the racetrack on you, and it's that prep. These
Sure.
guys that are out here doing it, like Tim. You always go back to Tim because he's at the top. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that he goes over his stuff quite a bit, because how often does he break at the racetrack? At these hills, it's not very often he does.
Yeah.
Yes, he does have some great parts, but I would imagine he spends a lot of time going over his stuff and checking. I don't pull diffs and that kind of stuff unless there was an issue at one point in time, mm-hmm. or unless it's just been a long time. I might pull a diff and throw another one in. I've got a couple of RS1s that DC Motorsports and HD have gotten me all the internals in now, mm-hmm. and so we may swap a diff mid-season or something. But for the most part, I don't have have to do that like before. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of why I ask is, you make those investments in parts, and it kind of takes a little bit of that race prep, takes some of that load off by, okay, I know I have the single best thing that's tried and true and tested here, and I don't, I may not have to be as thorough with that check. If it's not complaining, if it's not barking at me, probably going to be okay. Just give it the once over and then let it be done. And that peace of mind goes a long way in the driving too, because if you know, hey, that lower passenger A-arm heim joint, it was kind of looked a little weird to me. It's kind of one of those like, well, maybe I won't drive the passenger side hard. I'll try to keep it away from danger. That changes your whole game plan, your mentality, and now you're less committed too.
Yeah, you don't need to be racing. If you think you've got something wrong with your car, you don't need to be racing. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, some of this stuff that we're going up isn't any kind of joke. I mean, I would be upset. Like if, some of these kids are young that are out here racing with us, I would be totally disappointed in their adults or something if they had something wrong with their car and they let their kid go out there. That would be crazy. But
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's happening at all. I think that the young kids that are racing with us, like Cash and that kind of stuff, have top quality parts, and they're going over them, quite often to make sure that everything's ready. I wouldn't want to put even myself in a car that wasn't that I didn't feel was 100%.
Are you ever worried about the safety of these hills? Because I mean, call it what it is. Y'all race some of the biggest hills in the country. Are you ever, you mentioned leaving your purse at home, that kind of thing. Does your gut ever just be like, oh, this is a big one,
Yep. Every time almost.
Really? So
yeah,
how do you fight it?
Most of the time when I get there and we check out the hills, if it's a big hill, even a hill we've raced, like Windrock, we've raced Windrock a couple of times.
Yeah.
These big long hills that if you get barrel rolling, you can just keep rolling. I mean, it's a kind of scary thing, but
yeah, of course.
I mean, ideally you try to keep all four tires on the ground, but Wade been down there last year and where he raced that 2-seater, and it was his first event really to race, and he rolled it all the way back downhill, and looked like it was kind of trashed when it was done. There wasn't a whole lot of damage done to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was his real first competition.
Yeah.
And so it makes you wonder what the hell somebody's thinking to get back in a car. I mean,
dude,
after that was
listen,
first time. So.
my first probably 15 podcasts, if you go back and listen to the first probably 25 hours of the show, it is me asking everybody, what is wrong with you? Why would you do this? Because you're crazy. Even the guys that I go locally ride with, like they'll climb some stuff and I'm just like, Lloyd, where is the bypass? Because I don't part of me is like, I trust my cage. I trust everything about what I've got, but I don't even want to put myself in the situation because it's crazy, man. You guys are next level for sure.
Well, I think that's why it's important to get the people out there. I mean, I think that if we could get the people out to see these hills and watch the events live, I think that's the solution to trying to grow the sport. I mean, if we could sell these events out every time, where we were having to have the fire marshal there, that's what would be awesome.
Yeah.
That they were shutting the gates every time. I don't know what that solution is, if it's lower ticket prices or, figuring out how to fit more people in there so we can't shut the doors on it, but it's getting the people there to see it. I mean, that's what's going to keep this sport from not growing is not getting the fan base built.
Sure. Absolutely. I agree with you. So last thing I really have for you is to talk about the buggy and your future plans. What are the things on the buggy that you like the most or you think have made the biggest impact to your performance?
Well, of course, I've got some sponsors. Of course, I got Super Grip. Of course, the K9s are a great added bonus. They are a great tire. I've got the Turner axles. It's keeping that power to the ground.
Yep.
We got some power from DW Performance. He's out in like Utah. He's out west, and we've had a lot of success with that. LMW has stepped on board this year. and we've got some of their parts, and we've got some more of their parts. 859 Off-Road has stepped up, and they're really going to help me out. We're going to build a new chassis. We were going to build it in this off season.
Ooh.
But we didn't have an off season this year, and we'll have all LNW fab stuff on that chassis. And it's just trying to keep these good parts on there. Keep these good companies behind you. We got these shocks from Gary Hinkle with G-Force. All these major guys. Paul Wolf, Travis. All these guys are running these G-Force shocks. It's not just because of he knows what he's doing. It's also because the people in the sport. I mean, Gary is such a nice guy. I mean, we go over to, like we were talking about, Jamie and John and those guys. I mean, those guys are the people in this sport are always amazing me at how generous and how nice and how willing they are to talk to you.
I would agree.
And go through things with you. I mean, I guess last year at Rush, the Race to Riches was the biggest eye-opener for me because I hadn't been in the sport an entire year yet. And I was leading the bounty points in the SRRS by a decent amount. And going into Race to Riches, a Pro Rock event, I blew the transmission out climbing Hill 2 when we got to the top. I blew it completely apart. Before I left the park, there were 3 people that offered me their transmission so I could race the next weekend. I think it was the next weekend or 2 weeks after that, to take their transmission out of their vehicle and give it to me so that I could make sure I could make that race. A couple of these guys I hardly even knew.
Yeah.
There is no sport that I could ever imagine being a part of that people would take parts off their car so you could go and win a championship. I mean, that's just unheard of to me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And before I made it home, there was a 4th guy that told me, hey, man, you just come down here Thursday and on your way to the finals at Bikini Bottoms, and we'll pull mine out of my car. We'll put it in your car. You can stay here, and then you can go on down there Friday. I mean, it's crazy. The people is what makes the sport. And that's why it's hard to get away from this sport, because of these people are just, it's insane how nice they are. Whether they're racers or fans or whatever, it's a blessing to be a part of it. I can say that.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. I love hearing stories like that, because that kind of generosity has been shown to me as well, from John Arnold and Gary and all those guys, and Jamie. I was out there doing a 1-man crew at the race I was at, and they just were like, "Hey, man, like, what do you need some help? Like, do you want us? What are you working on?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just pulling new hubs and wheel bearings and everything." And they're like, "Well, let us know if you guys need anything at all. Just come over, come use our tools, use our parts, whatever you need." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." And I kind of just took it as, face value, always being nice, But it's so funny, when I got him on the podcast, I talked to him and he's like, "Do you remember what I said to you?" And I was like, "Honestly, I have no idea, because it was such an overwhelming experience." He said, "Anytime, pull up next to us, anything you need, we'll get you taken care of." And just by the way he said it, and the fact that he said it again, it really speaks volumes to the authenticity of these people, for sure.
Oh, those guys mean that. I
yeah.
mean, it's not something they're saying just because they're on a show or anything like that.
Yeah.
Those guys literally mean it. I mean, I've been in business for over 20 years. I've been very fortunate in my life. And I have met a small number of people that have treated me really well, even when I was young or whatever. And I mean, even successful people that I've been around, a lot of people that have had plenty of money, but they were never as nice as the people that you encounter out here in the off-road community. I mean, It is absolutely mind-boggling to me of how nice and giving, and just, even if it's just the information, even if they're not giving you something.
Yeah.
I mean, Nathan Wolf, he talked to me and be like, "Well, why did you do this?" And, I don't have the answer. I didn't really know why I did that. Why'd you get off the gas here? What were you doing here? And, he was only doing it because he wanted to help me. He wasn't doing it to bust my balls, which is part of it. But,
sure.
It's just kind of crazy. Even though you're going to compete against his brother, in a little bit, he's still wanting to know and wanting to help you.
Yeah.
So it's just a really different thing that I've never been a part of in my life.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think that's a really that's a feel good. That's a feel good moment right there. And I love that. I love that everyone gets treated that way because it's not just you that we hear that from. It's so many different people, and I love that. But hey, where can people find you for the rest of the season? Are you gonna round out Southern Rock? Are you gonna try and finish up Pro Rock this year? What's it looking like for you?
Yeah, we're going to race all the Pro Rock stuff. Whatever they race, we'll be there. And I'm going to try to maybe hit a couple of Renegades. That was our plan early on.
Yeah.
Once I blew the motor up and everything got all crazy, we didn't hit any of those things. But the plan originally at the beginning of the season was to hit all the Pro Rocks and all the Renegades and then fill in whatever we could fill in from there. I hope Outlaw comes back closer to us next year. I really liked racing Outlaw last year with those guys. So I'd like to race with those guys again, and so that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm sure we'll be racing some stuff at Dirt Nasty. They always have some standalone stuff, and I could imagine seeing a lot of standalone events here with the craziness of COVID here, and it's busted up the schedule so bad that some of these parks didn't get to have an event, and so I think they could probably have one after kind of the seasons have wrapped up. So I'm looking forward to just getting some single events.
Is Dirt Nasty? Do they have what kind of trails are there? I know they have some pretty nasty hill climbs and stuff like that, but trail wise, is it worth the drive from Nashville?
It's a smaller park. I mean, it's I would think it would be close to like Wildcat size or something. Okay. And Toby and those guys are they're making some headway and trying to do different type of events, and they're getting there. I mean, it's a great place for spectators because you're elevated, so you don't really notice how tall and long the hills are because you're about midways up you're on the other side of the hill almost.
Yeah,
it's really close in that little ravine, so it's great for spectators because the parking lot's right there too. It's like even closer than what Rush is, and they've just swapped facilities. They were in a smaller place, and now they've changed over to this place, I think, 2 years ago or something.
Okay.
So they've just enlarged their parking lot. So they're building their big office. It's like a giant cabin there. And so, they're developing that place. It's like everything else. It takes a ton of money to do this stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, any last words or anything like that before we close things out? Because I think that's great when people, if they want to come see you for the remainder of the 2020 season, obviously you're going to be building the chassis in the off season. Super excited. Do you think design wise, you're going to make any big changes from what you have now?
Yeah, I'm going to be able to see out of this next one.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
If you notice, if you look at any pictures of me in this chassis, it was definitely not built for me. I'm like 6'1", and the guy that it was built for, I think he was like 5'8" or something. I don't know how tall he was, but I can't see out of it. And if you look at pictures taken on from the front of me, I mean, it cuts off like the top of my helmet.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to see out of. So
I can imagine so.
Climbing hills, it's kind of hard because you can't really see the hill. So
yeah, that's one thing that people always kind of forget is you really have to look up when you're sitting at the bottom. It's really an upwards look rather than, I'm just looking straight out of the gate there. It's funny. I've got a picture pulled up of the straight on shot, and yeah, you're exactly right. It looks like it's about right at eyebrow level with you.
Yeah. It's it was not made for me, but it's it's done the job, and I feel like I could race a cardboard box if I had to.
Yeah.
But we've had some success in this buggy, and we've twisted it up and we've straightened it back out a couple of times, and I mean it still performs. So we're going to finish out the season in it, and like I said, 859 is going to get me in a new chassis, and I'm actually super excited to put all these L&W parts on it and really see what a straight car drives like. Honestly.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get it. It's funny how, it's you keep a machine for a while and then you forget you get a new one and you're like, oh crap, my thing rides like a piece of junk.
Well, I mean, it still does well.
Yeah, absolutely. I did.
Competitive.
Let me roll it back. Your race car is not a piece of junk. I'm referring to when you steering gets a little thing and you start realizing, you realize, I don't really have to like turn it this way, and then it's little details. Piece of junk was an overrated term. Let me say that.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes I'm calling it a piece of junk myself. So I mean, it's part of
Every
it.
vehicle I've ever owned is a piece of junk if I've owned it in the past. Whatever I have right now is a slightly less piece of junk.
Well, I feel like it's always a piece of junk until you go sell it. Like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
I've climbed everything.
Well, there's a lot of videos out there that will testify that it's climbed a lot of things. I don't know if it's climbed everything, but it's climbed a lot of things.
That's fact. You get your guys' buggies come with a not only a bill of sale, but y'all come with a full rap sheet of videos of just exactly what it'll do.
Well, I feel like too, like every time we've twisted it, I've twisted it back and we've braced it or we've done something else, and so it's probably better now than it was, stronger now than what it was when we started.
Yeah.
So, that you learn the weak points and you learn what you do better next time. And so that's part of the game. I mean, I've just gotten started in this stuff. And so I don't plan on going anywhere. I plan on being around for, several years anyways. My kids are all old and they're leaving me. So that's kind of why I've gotten back into this, because I've kind of have seems like a lot of free time on my hands now with my kids running off. So
yeah, well,
I'm older than a lot of these guys out here that we're racing against, so that's part of it, I guess.
Maybe I'm on the flip side of that, and I got young ones coming. So I may have a short hiatus, but the podcast will continue. So,
you know what? The best thing is getting those young ones out there, and y'all got to get out of that 2-seater, get you one of those 4-seaters, and pack them around with you.
I'm already talking to my wife about it. I thought I had her convinced before we got pregnant, and then she was like, "The baby's not even here yet. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "You said I could." And we had that whole conversation. So I'm working on it. Don't worry, I'm working on it.
How long have you been married, Jesse?
We have been married since last October, so it is brand new, fresh.
Okay, so I'm not married now, but I'm engaged. Been engaged for a little while, and I'll give you the best piece of advice that I could give you is that when she says you can, you better do it right then, because she may change her mind.
Listen. I already had my razor sold, and I was going. It was the world's most uncomfortable situation, because I was like, "Hey, I sold my razor today," and she goes, "Why?" I was like, "Well, I'm going to pick up the other one tomorrow," and she goes, "I like obviously insert conflict," and then I had to call the guy and she'd be like, "Hey, man, there was a little bit of miscommunication at my house, and I'm sorry, but this is not going to work out," and I felt so bad, and it was just it was one of those things where I think I've got the 2-seater for a while. And until everybody can get a little bit more comfortable in a razor, I'll probably have the 2-seater, which I can't complain too much. It's a good car.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, man. Just getting out in the woods and getting outside, period, and getting kids out of the house is the best thing I can imagine for them, anyways. Just that's a huge selling point for me. I wish I would have been able to afford these cars when mine were younger.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in the position to do so. I was building houses and that kind of stuff, and so I was never in the position to own a 4-seat razor or a razor in general either. So I'd say just get it and get them out there. Get them outside.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, certainly so. Well, Wyatt, with that, we're an hour and 15 minutes or so. I'm not going to take any more of your evening, because I know dinner and all that kind of fun stuff are just around the corner for probably both of us. So I appreciate you big time for taking the time to come on the show. Anything last words before we sign off here?
No, man. I mean, I guess I could run through real quick and just go through, the Force Super Grip, Gary Hinkle with G-Force, Dave Carter, DC Motorsports, Brandon with HD Extreme Off-Road, Turner Cycles, DW Performance, PCI Pro Custom Imaging, Extreme Razor Performance, and Trinity Racing. Those guys are standing behind me as much as possible, and I appreciate everything that they do for me. So that's pretty much it for me, Jesse. I appreciate you having me on here and us chatting for a bit.
Yeah, no problem. Stay on the line with me. And with that, everybody at the podcast world, we'll see you next time.